Hello, hello, it's Nadine, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. And today is a very exciting day for me because I'm joined by my guest, Dr. Morgaine Gaye. Welcome, Morgaine. It's great to have you here. Morgaine and
Yeah,
I
thank
go
you for
back a
inviting me.
very long way. And although I've spent the best part of, well, what, 28 years in Australia, before that, we
Wow.
went to college together. So that was a really long time ago. So that's how we know each other. But we're not, and it kind of is a little bit of an excuse to catch up because, life is full and you're always on the move, it would seem. But we're going to talk about some of the things that you do as well. And yeah, we're going to see where the conversation takes us. You've got a very interesting job, which is probably going to take up a bunch of our conversation, but you probably get sick of people asking what it is when you tell them what you do.
Yeah, a little bit, but
And
what?
I often start my podcast with a big intro, read the biography kind of thing. And I don't have one for you. You're a food
I'll have a look.
futurologist amongst many other things. And yeah, you're a super smart cookie. But as I said, you probably get sick of people asking you what that is. But that's where I'm going to start. Welcome.
That's all right.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank
me.
you.
You look fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's early here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting that we go back so many decades and we went to the same university and our lives have gone in such different directions in many ways, not in all ways, I
Mm.
think. But it's almost like they eventually converge in some different universe, which is great. And yeah, it's amazing how time is, and my job is really about that. It's about time.
Mm.
And I find that I spend a lot of my time in the future. We're all supposed to be mindful and in the present, and most of my time I spend thinking about or living into the future, for better or for worse. So yeah, what do I do? It's a really difficult one to describe because although I'm called a food futurologist, food in some ways is the very last part of my job. And people think maybe I'm a foodie or I'm a chef or that I like eating out or any of those things. And what I eat and what I think about food and what I do for my job are not the same thing. So I'm none of the aforementioned. And what I try to do is show consumers, people, clients, whoever it is that wants to know what this future landscape of humanity looks like. So if we go forward 7 to 10 years' time, what's that look like in terms of preoccupations, geopolitics, economics? What's the topics of the day? What's the considerations of the day? Um, Everything from just the cultural zeitgeist, the aesthetics, the things that make people tick. And so I look at all of that stuff, and of course, off the back of that, we'll see then how do people go to work, what do people think about work, what motivates people, what do people want to eat, why do they want to eat it. So for me, I'm more interested in the why than the what about the future. Why are we going to go there, and then what? So what does that mean? And that's it, really. So generally, I am spending most of my job doing talks, big sort of 1 hour trend briefings, I call them. They can be bespoke, they can be subject specific, or they can be general about this future landscape. And there's about 300 unique images per hour because I make it super visual because I think it's really hard to describe a future if you can't show it. So I try to show images of what that looks like. And that might be it's all visual of different things, interiors, design, some food, some, but then really talking about the why are we going to be living into this space. And yeah, so I predict all sorts of things. And in the past, I have predicted all sorts of things. 2018, I was talking in my talks about COVID. I never said COVID, but I showed pictures of people in masks and hazmat suits and picture of a virus. I've talked about Trump getting in the first time, way back when he wasn't even particularly in the running. Talked about the British politics a lot over the years. I talked about the dissolution of Europe, excuse me, which is yet to come. There's a lot of things yet to come. So there's a lot of things. And sometimes it's very difficult because I just heard something just a couple of days ago about a prediction I made in 2015 that hasn't come, but it's for 2030. And I've just had some inside information that that's what's now on the cards. And I feel personally quite upset by it and quite sick because of it. You know, I almost have a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach because it's a very weird feat to be right about something that's so monumental. And it's not always, it's never usually a good feeling. It's a very weird job that I have. So that's what I do.
Oh my God, I've got so many questions, Morgan. And like,
Got
so
a
there's so
vase
many
of
things that
tea.
you said then. I'm like, take a breath and where do I go first? Oh God. Well, let's just go right back. Okay. There's one thing I was going to say, right? And I've been planning this kind of line that I was going to say to you, that you're kind of like a 21st century sage, right? Or like, you know, but then I started reading your book. And one of the first things it says is I'm not psychic. And I'm like, damn it. She's debunked it already before I even got a chance. But you kind of are, right? Like okay, so you don't, it's like, yes, you're following trends and behaviors and, history and all of these things, but you're bringing it together and you're predicting things that haven't
Yeah.
happened. That's kind of
I
a
mean,
little stagey or like,
there is a little bit of, oh God, it's like if I have some feel, I don't even know how to describe them. Some things I just feel like I could predict, but I can't do it on demand. Like if it was, tell me my fortune, am I going to meet the man of my dreams? But I get some information. I don't really know how to describe it. So I've just done quite well on the football scores. I know nothing about football. It definitely helps. So I sometimes get some random bits of feeling. And I had a feeling about a woman that I didn't really know 2 years ago. And I actually contacted her and I said, I know you don't really know me, but I sing in a female barbershop group and you're our director. You don't know that yet, but you inside yourself know that we're the chorus for you. And we know that you're for us. And ultimately, and I don't know how it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so, and well, she is now. It took 2 years. I
wow.
don't know how it's just this feeling. Sometimes I have a feeling. And then when I've said it to somebody or about something, I wished I'd never said anything. I was shut up. Why do you say? Because I shoot myself in the foot. I'm scared then that, oh no, if I'm right, it's bad. If I'm wrong, it's even worse. Oh, so anyway, so I wouldn't say I'm a sage. I wouldn't say I'm psychic, but sometimes I get some bits of information
Yeah, you got
and then I have to
something.
prove it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go right back. Okay, so we went to college together. We studied theatre. You were in theatre, weren't you? In
Yeah.
the theatre stream, at a small college in the
Yes.
UK. Did our degree there, but you've got a doctorate.
Yeah.
That's not in food futurology.
No, that is not. I started because I'd done a minor. I was doing a minor in music a little bit at Dartington, and then I
Mm,
dropped out of that. And I was never interested in acting or performing, really. I was interested in making. I was interested in space. I think I was interested in space, in shape, in space, and so then I ended up going to some lectures after university about Islamic geometry, and I'd done different things before that and after that, and I'd grown up in a Muslim country in the Middle East for a long period of time. So I started looking at geometry and architecture, and then went down that route a lot more, and had this question about what I don't know why are humans, why are we alive? What's the point? Not, oh, I want to die, but what's the point of being alive? And
mm.
I wanted to answer that question. So I started looking at quantum mechanics and philosophy, and that's what I ended up doing my PhD in. So it's like a quantum philosophy PhD,
Cool.
looking at the way things connect. And really, that's sort of what I'm doing
What
now,
you do
just
now,
looking at the way
yeah.
things connect.
But where did your job come from? Like, are you the only person that does it? Did you make it up? Is it a
There are,
thing?
this is all of those, yes. No,
Yes,
there
yes,
are
and yes.
lots of, there are now, there are now quite a few futurologists, and I've been doing it for decades. So when I first started, and how I first started was probably that I have a school friend who's known me since I was 8. And and because we go back such a long way, and she knew me at a time, oh gosh. And she's a TV producer, and she was making a TV series for BBC World called Business 2025. And wow, that was futuristic. 2025. I mean, wow, can you imagine, right? We're almost there now. They were using futurologists, and she had 3 and she needed another one. This is like 3 days before the shoot. And she said, can you do it? You'll be good at that. You're good at that stuff. She gave me the 5 topics. She said, just say anything. Just say anything. I mean, no pressure. And she knew that I would be the sort of person that would just step up and do it. But what transpired is that I seemed to be much better than the futurologist. And actually, one of the things that I do remember was electric cars. And none
Oh,
of them, they all said, no, there's no way we'll be driving electric cars. And I said, yeah, well, definitely, that's definitely going to be a thing. So it was interesting what's come up at what's happened since then, because a lot of the predictions I was correct, even though it wasn't my job. So I think that she knew that I had that capability in me, and I had lots of the different traits of making that a possible job. Because I think one of the things that you do have to have, and you have that much more in youth, I think, but also my character was quite fearless, because you have to be able to step up there and say stuff that you believe in that nobody else believes in, and to be shot down and to take that risk. And so I was like a massive risk taker when I was younger. It gets less, I think, as you get older. But I was super risk, just like anything, didn't care, wild, would do it. So I suppose she put me up for it, and I did it. And it kind of set the ball rolling, but it took a long time to actually monetize it and put value on selling ideas, because it's an idea. And then how do you prove to somebody that you're right, or that you've got an idea that they want, till you give it away and then you have no commodity? So it's been a real journey. It's been a really, feels like I'm only just getting my feet under the table. Not really,
wow.
but it feels like I'm still learning all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, 100 questions came up again, and they've all kind of dropped in and out.
It's okay,
Okay,
I can
so
have some
that's how
tea.
you became a food futurologist. Oh, that was, yeah, you've kind of said, there's a lot of pressure on you because what if you get it wrong? And obviously,
Yeah,
part of you building up your reputation has been like the amount of times that you've been accurate about stuff. And the more you do that, the
yeah,
more trusted you become. But do you get
yeah.
worried when you step into that role and someone's hired you to do a talk or to present on what the food's going to be like in an organization, and do you get scared that it's not going to come true, or do you
The
get scared
food
that it
part's
is going to come true?
Yeah, the food part's actually the easy part for me. So if somebody's, so I've had like long term, so I did a job for Philadelphia cream cheese in Europe, where it was developing the vegan version. And that was great. And that for me was sort of that's in my wheelhouse. It's really my sweet spot. That's good for me. What's harder is when it's really generic to a company that isn't in food. And so for example, if it's because not always, but most of my audience tends to be men.
Mm.
And if they're in, like, men in finance, perhaps might be a certain type of person. And I've stood up on stage. I've only had, I would say, 3 negative experiences ever in my job. And that will have been one, when I stood up and actually the questioning at the end went down a really weird route about the royal family. It was really odd. And it was very odd. I don't know why it went down that route, and it seemed, I don't know, it just got more and more difficult. Yeah, sometimes it's not good. It's not pleasant and it's not good. And I don't get scared. I mean, obviously, when you're speaking like in front of 1,000 people, and I don't have any script or any notes, so I never know how I'm going to be, if I'm going to be flowing. I hope I am, but I want it to land. I want the audience I want to connect with the audience. And sometimes, and now it's more on Zoom, but even now on Zoom, because I've got more used to Zoom over the years, I can feel the audience on Zoom now. I didn't feel at the beginning, I couldn't at all. And I think I just don't like it when there isn't a rapport. So it's not that I'm afraid, it's just I want to be able to connect with the audience. And irrespective of, that I get paid, but I want it to be positive and I want people to feel benefit from it. So it's important that they think it's good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, your You say in your, I've read somewhere, you do say in your book that you're like actually not a foodie, you're not a chef, you're not really that into cooking or anything. Can you tell, I did have to have a little chuckle, like just with I haven't got very far into the book yet, but with your descriptions of your, like where you came from and your background,
Oh yeah.
as a child with food, can you give us some of the
Oh,
things that you
yeah, just
experienced?
yeah. I mean, I grew up in a quite a dysfunctional family of one child, me, and not really any other relatives or anybody else around. And my dad was a bodybuilder and a power lifter, and it was back in the 70s. So he was trying to, it was back before you could get all of these available protein shakes and all of the things. The information about fitness in a way was so limited. It was the Arnie days sort of thing. So my dad was eating baby food and Complan and uh, Filey's rusks and I don't know, a lot of
Yeah,
baby
right.
food, got a lot of calories in, and was quite exacting about food. But it was the 70s and things just weren't that available. It was meat and two veg basically. And my mum was a butcher and I didn't like meat. And it was, my mum used to think that you can't have a salad unless it's summer, and probably it wasn't even available anyway. And the lettuce was probably iceberg lettuce, and oh god, it
Lettuce,
just I
tomato, and
remember,
cucumber as a salad, right?
oh, just awful, awful. But I mean, for me, even as a child, I remember distinctly being dissatisfied and disappointed by the food offering, and also by my parents as well. But yeah, and just finding the whole thing really unsatisfying and miserable, I think. And I was just actually talking to my partner about this yesterday, that sitting at home at the table when my parents were together, so before the age of about 9 or 10, we had this enormous, grand boardroom table that probably seated about 12 in this dilapidated house that all needed fixing up, that had sort of painting, writing on the wall when we just needed a message, just painted it on the wall. I mean, it was just the most bizarre. But the table itself was this massive mahogany, beautiful thing. And we'd sit down as three people, the most tense meal ever, at one end of this table with nothing else in the room, and you sort of can hear the knife and fork
Oh
scraping. And I'm
no.
thinking, oh, I don't want to eat this. I don't like pork. You're eating your dinner. I don't like pork. Sort of, oh, just the things that I wanted to eat, I couldn't have. My mum, I mean, one of the good things, I suppose, and I'd say this in the book, is that she only made proper food. It was at least proper homemade
Mm.
food. There was no packet, ready meal, anything really. And I wanted all of that because I was a child, and of course I did. I did used to go up to my friend's house who had a chest freezer, which was like exotic. And she used to have fish fingers, and we used to get the fish fingers out of the freezer and suck the breadcrumbs off. I don't,
Oh my
it was
God.
just the things that
The
that I wanted.
stories that you put into that book and just the way you tell them.
I mean, just the whole history of food. I think every single family has got histories with food. I mean, I know you do because your dad was a baker.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
your
but yeah,
whole
dinner
history
time,
with,
like meals, we all sat around the table, and it was all, very important that we all had, we had dinner together, and you had to eat everything. No one was allowed to leave the table until
mm,
everyone had finished and the plates were empty. And it was, yeah, so that
yeah.
was kind of like, it was kind of a bit scary. Sunday
Mm,
lunch was at lunchtime. Didn't have
yeah.
dinner, yeah, didn't have tea time. We had lunch, and it was always a roast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sunday breakfast, I think we all had to sit around the table as well. But yeah, I just remember it being. I remember getting told off because I wanted tomato sauce on my roast dinner, and I cried when I wasn't allowed. And now I look back and I'm thinking, well, if you give me fucking tomato sauce on everything else, of course I'm going to want it on my roast.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But
I mean,
we did have a little bit of the beef burgers and chips, fish fingers, chips and peas, baked beans on toast situation going on. The first time my mum used a bouquet garni, she left it in the thing, and I was like, Mum, I've got a tea bag in my dinner.
yeah. Well, you were definitely
Uh,
way ahead of the curve. I mean, my mum wouldn't even know now what a bouquet garni is. Like, she has very limited knowledge of that. She just made plain basic. I say that's not true. She didn't all. It wasn't all plain basic food because she'd been in Africa and we had these weird curries that my dad still makes. My
uh,
mum can't remember it, but my dad's still making these weird curries that were the African curries, and they have different condiments on the side of the plate, which is pineapple, chopped
oh
pineapple,
yeah.
sultanas, a desiccated coconut. It was very odd, and yeah, it was basically a dessert. It was a curried dessert. It was like fruit salad with curry. It was an odd thing. Yeah,
How
my
much
parents are very strange with food.
how much do you think that's influenced uh, what you do with your own food today? And like, do you feel like that's
Mm.
separate from your work?
Yeah, it's definitely separate from my work. I mean, I absolutely didn't want to work in food, and the biggest sort of sea change for me in terms of food was, and I think it's in the book. I can't remember, it's so long ago, but I met a friend at school who I met him at a party. He was in my year at school. We were about 13. I met him at a party, went to his house from the party, and I just remember this house was like something from my dreams. It was like I found my people, and it was this farmhouse on the hill. It was at night. It was in a summer's evening, and the French windows were open, and the curtains were billowing through the French windows. Classical music was playing. I went into the house. The mother was sort of German and a little bit hippie. She was like, "Would you like some homemade peach nectar?" It's like, I found my people. Thank you. So I'd come from this extremely, I was living with my mum. We were really in poverty and free school meals and extremely working class. And then I found this sort of very bohemian family, and I stayed. And they had a bath in the middle of the room, and there were all plants from the outside growing inside the house. It was an absolute bohemian madness, really crazy. And I stayed there and lived with them for about 6 months that
Oh
night
wow.
from that night. And they were making their own pizza bases and elderflower champagne, and I don't know, probably knitting their own shower curtains. I don't know. They were amazing. And it just took me into the route because I was already vegetarian. It took me down that route of real. It was just it was the early 80s. It was whole foods, it was the whole meal, whole food, lentil, the whole thing it took me into that space for myself. But in terms of a job, my job's completely separate from what I do for my food, I think. Well,
Mm,
it's then of course I know a lot, so there's things that I wouldn't choose to eat, but I probably wouldn't have anyway.
yeah. What else? Yeah. Okay, so you're a futurologist, so let's talk a little bit more about um, trends, right? So you follow
Mm.
trends, and in your book again, you talk about how well the subtitle is why we eat and what we eat, and you pretty much say you think you know that you think you're making your own personal choices, but really you're not.
Yeah.
So how does that all work?
Yeah, I think that's it's a really of all the things, in some ways, that's the biggest idea in the book, or the
Mm,
biggest thing that I hope people grasp, is that you think that you think you have free will in what you choose. Of course, you do in some ways, but there are a lot of predestined factors going into choice. And I think we know we're being manipulated in clothing when we talk about fashion, but
mm,
with food we think, no, I like this but I don't like that. And it's really about socialization, it's about who your friends are. For example, it's like in Australia, Tim Tams,
mm,
or a Lamington. It's a cultural norm that people are used to. And then you bring a Lamington, because there's a cafe right on the corner by me here, and it's the cafe that's been sort of, the accolade is that it brought the flat white to London or the
okay.
UK, and it's Australian and it sells Lamingtons, and I can tell you they're not that popular except with Australians. So it's because we don't have the cultural history. They sell Anzac cookies. They've got loads of the Tim Tams. They always sell them. That they have those things, but it's because it's a cultural thing for Australians, not that other people taste them and go, "Wow, love those Tim Tams. Got to have some more of those." And I think it's the same for British people when they smell someone walking down the street maybe especially on a cold day, and they've got chips and you can smell the vinegar. There's just something about that when you're British, when you go, oh, there's a delicious history that's
Mm,
connected to our olfactory bulb
yeah.
and our memory. And so all of that plays into our choices, plus the fact that if you're a vegan, you don't tend to hang around with lots of people who want to go to McDonald's. Your McDonald's friends are because you're a McDonald's person. Typically, like attracts like. So we find our food tribes. So it's all really interconnected, and brands spend a lot of time honing in on who is their consumer target market and then playing into that. So we know from, my job is part to know all of this about texture and taste and packaging and branding, what attracts people. So for example, children don't like texture, they like creamy. They don't want things with bits in. If it's got bits in, they don't like that. So, like the orange juice with pulp isn't typically a children's preference. And it gets the same with old people. It's why old people love ice cream. So, if you're old, you love an ice cream, you go back into that. So, that curve. And also, our taste buds die. So, that's why we start to prefer more complex flavors as we get older, like coffee, like darker chocolate. Things like olives, not always, but generally, and beer tend to be an older person's profile taste, not a child.
Mm,
So already we're starting to see that profile, but your taste buds die as you get older and older. So then, of course, when you're much older, you need to salt your food more, perhaps, or you need stronger flavors. People start putting chili in and things like that. So already we're starting to create a preference thing. Then you think about textures, and we divided up into texture preference people. So, for example, smooshers are people like Oprah Winfrey, perhaps, who likes mashed potato. She likes to push smooshy things through her teeth. There's something about creaminess that attracts her. Other people like crunch. So they're crunchers. Other people are meddlers. They want something that's soft and chewy and crunchy. They want all of that kind of party in the mouth experience. And so, for example, even countries are divided by texture. So America like chewy cookies. Chewy is their thing. And that's why all the cookies for them, it's big cookie, chocolate chip cookies that are chewy. English people, biscuits, they're crispy because that's why you dip them in your tea. It's a crispy thing. So already culturally, there's a divide. So it starts, there's so many concentric circles of preference and taste where you're choosing. or you think you're choosing. And then there's also the thing about perception. So I've done tests, and I think it's in the book, where I was asked to drink, there were different tests. And one was that we were all to drink this white liquid in this little shot glass. It was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Cold white liquid, quite creamy. And it tasted to me like fish, something like liquidized fish. It was horrible. And we didn't know what it was. And they said all they'd done is change the color of what it was, because what it was cold Heinz tomato soup. And when you take away the color and you take away the reference points, people can't identify it. And that's why all of those signals, those consumer signals, make people believe that it is what they think it is and that they like it. And that's why we've got things like pink. If you, these don't have to be artificial. You can use wild blueberry powder to make food for your kids pink, and it makes them think it's 11% sweeter. So you can fool them. So you can do naughty things like that. But it's what brands do. Pink food, we think it's sweeter than it really is. Or bright lights in any kind of fast food chain. Dunkin' Donuts do this. They put very bright lights in their places, and they've got a really high rating for good coffee, because it makes you think the coffee's stronger if the lights are brighter. So there's a ton of these tricks. And so that's why we think that we can tell what our palate likes, but we're influenced every step of the way. And smells are pumped into bags. So popcorn, when you open the bag of popcorn, smells amazing, because the popcorn that's been pumped into the air in the bag. It's not the actual popcorn itself. So, food business is really, really clever, really tricky.
Yeah. When you wrote the book,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this is almost like a dirty secret of the food industry, and that like if you're working with them, that you shouldn't be telling anyone what they're doing, kind of thing. I'm not
Yes. So
like is there any kind of like thing that holds you back from saying, oh, I better not say that, because Bob, you wouldn't be able to tell
yeah.
me if there was.
Oh no. I mean, because I signed an NDA with all the brands, there's lots of things I can't say. But I can't say what they're doing, or there's a lot of things I can't say. And when I first wrote the first draft of the book, by the way, the book started a bit like, if you've ever made a vase on a pottery wheel, it starts like this and it collapses, you cut it down, in the end you end up with a bowl. Oh, maybe that's just me. Well, that's what the book started like, this huge thing, and ended up whittling down because I was so sick of it by the end. And sadly, as you may have noticed, there are some typos in there. So there are a few missing bits of punctuation, or it's so infuriating. I just got so sick of it. I thought, better done than good, get it out.
Yeah.
Because the publisher, originally, this is before COVID, the publisher wanted me to expose, and it be a lot more of a dirty secret expose, and I couldn't do that. So everything I've said in the book is not something that
you've signed a disclosure kind of thing.
No. This is just stuff that I know, that I've experienced myself, or that this is not stuff that I've learned in a company that they said, whatever you do, don't tell them we're doing this. So there's none of that. There's no sort of insider secrets per se. It's just common knowledge within industry, and people know. And that's it, really. But I mean, I think more than that, it's more of a journey about, what I'd hope for the book is that it's my bit of story about food, a little bit about personal story about food, because I think everybody has it, everybody. And there's so much, I didn't say it all, but there's so much to say about our own relationships with food, because it's the one thing that you can't escape. It's really difficult, even if you're not eating anything. It's because you have a dysfunctional relationship with food, or there's something in there. It's about relationships, family, and food symbolizes mother. So it's a real, we're tightly bound with it all. And then, and then the part that is about people waking up to the fact that they think they're making a free choice, but they need to have a little bit of a recalibration, because even the businesses that are selling you health are still selling you something. And I think that's the thing, is that to really, I mean, and you know this better than anybody, it's getting back to the absolute fundamentals, which is the human system, and not just everybody's human system, it's your human
Yeah.
system. Because it doesn't, what works for your human system doesn't work for my human system. And I think that's the thing. It's why when people do diets or whatever, they don't work for everyone. And there'll be the majority of people that'll be the holy grail, but not for everybody. So, for example, a lot of people who are vegan or vegetarian will eat a lot of legumes, beans, and whatever. I cannot eat legumes and beans and whatever because I'm allergic. I can't digest them. So I can't digest the lectin and the protein in beans. It makes me unwell. So that's me. So it's no good anybody come and say, oh, well, what you need is some tofu and some tempeh. Yeah, no, not so much. And that's why I think that we've farmed out, we've outsourced our health and wellness and our own self-autonomy to not just the big brands, because we've kind of done that for a long time when we've gone, hey, supermarket, feed my family, but also to the brands that or to the people that we think really do know. And even they don't know, we are really so unique, each one of us. I think it's that, our DNA and our family history and everything. So we're complex and we're also simple.
Yes. Oh, I say that a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like people might say to you, "Oh, you look amazing. What do you do?" kind of thing. But again, it's like, well, what's working for you might not work for that next person.
100%.
So yeah, I think it's important to make educated decisions, right? And to be kind of, it's almost like you just need to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
But there is some
Because I
shit
think
going on,
it's,
right? Are there any
well,
shit
there's no,
things that you think, oh, that's just like,
yeah, I mean, it's very tricky. It's very tricky because, so I was at a well-being happy, it's called the Happy Place Festival by somebody who's quite well known in the UK called Fern Cotton, who's married to one of the Rolling Stones' sons, and she's written lots of books about happy place, and she's been quite successful, but actually saying, I'm not that happy, and I've had to really, get into touch with myself and my own well-being. And she's had eating issues, and she's disclosed all this. She's trying to give women tools to feel better and to be authentic and real. And it's great because it's coming from a person that you might not think struggles with all of that. So she set up this festival called the Happy Place Festival. And I went there. My friend was selling a really great, he's a marine biologist, and he works a lot with different sorts of seaweeds, and he's amazing. He's really doing good stuff. But that's the difficulty, is that what he's selling is wild Hebridean, different types of seaweed, and which is full of iodine and natural sources of just really good stuff. That's all he's selling, is just seaweed. But then there are other stands there selling other things. And one of the stands there was the company Dole, a big American brand, I would say, Dole, and they sell like tinned fruits and things like that. They were selling a little snack pot of something. And it said, the good for you vegan snack. And I said, okay, so better for you. I said, better than what? Oh, well, better than the other things you might choose. Like what? Once you start to drill down, and I did. And I challenged the brand manager, who was just happened to be there that day. And I said, can I have a look at the ingredients? Do you mind? I went, oh, Karagian gum. Interesting. Guar gum. Right. So what's the positioning on it? What is this that you're selling? So we just got into it. And I think that's what's difficult. Is that on the face of it, you go, oh, it's fruit and it's some coconut yogurt type custard.
that's healthy.
And then right, yeah, and then you start looking down what it really means. And I think that's the thing, is that there's still some watchwords that help brands position for people, and that's their job, by the way. blame them. It's difficult. What's really difficult is that their consumers are wanting options, they're wanting solutions, and then typically, often, not wanting to invest time to make that happen for themselves, because say, well, I'm busy, and everybody's got the same amount of time in the day, but the reality is people want to apportion their time differently. They don't want to spend an hour making XYZ. They'd rather spend an hour watching their favorite TV show. And that's how they want to apportion their time. And so brands create solutions for those people like that. But we have power to choose. And I think that's the thing, is that we can choose differently, but that's the difference between, why have you got biceps and I haven't? It's because I've chosen to do a lot of things to make my biceps big that you haven't chosen to do. It's tricky. It's really tricky, right? So it's about choice, and the brands are there because they're offering solutions that people are asking for, and their shareholders are needing money.
Yeah. It's a big one, really, isn't it? I guess, and raising awareness is important, which I think that what your book does.
I mean,
the
brands do respond. Yeah.
Right.
No.
The one thing I think of is like I don't know if they have it in the UK, but there's a lolly or sweet company called the Natural Confectionery Company, right? So they say, so it's like jelly lolly type things in a bag, and it's all like natural. And Louis got some in a birthday bag. He went, and we kind of usually tip him out, and I was like, oh look, let's have a look online, because it was obviously part of a multi-pack, so it didn't have the ingredients. And we went online, and it was like made in Thailand, which is okay, but it was like the ingredients list was like literally hundreds of things in the natural confectionery. Yeah. And so we get tricked because we're trying to do the right thing. And you think, well, I want to give my kid some sweets because I don't want them to miss out. And so I'll choose the ones that are the healthiest. Not that any sweets are healthy, which I'm always telling my children.
It's super difficult. It's so difficult, especially as a parent, because you're confronted with keeping them, not like, you don't want them to be the weirdo, and you want them to be able to choose. You want them to be able to choose for themselves. And I think if you restrict it all, then they go I've seen that, where they go the other way, where they want it all. It's almost like, if you let them have it all, they don't want it. If you don't let them have any of it, they want it all, and then they go crazy. It's so difficult. That line of parenting, especially now because of social media, of exposure to things way more than we had, and also send them to parties, and tricky, so tricky.
It's all
really
right.
difficult.
Yeah, we just try and treat them like normal human beings and help them make favorable choices and not overdo it with most things. What else? Here we go. Okay. So, what's the difference between something gaining popularity and a trend? So let me give you an example. I was thinking about this. I read in your book about veganism and how that's gained in popularity. And you kind of go historically why some of those things would have happened, even though people wouldn't necessarily realize that they've made the decision to change their diet to a vegan diet. So I'll use me as an example, right? So we started doing CrossFit however many years ago, long time ago. But there was a diet attached to it. There was a diet called the Zone Diet originally, which they kind of advocated for. So a lot of CrossFitters followed the Zone Diet. Then the paleo, it was Zone Diet was kind of food was broken into blocks. So depending on your body weight, you'd be able to
Okay.
have blocks of protein, fats, and carbohydrates.
Right. Okay.
And depending on what your goals were, how many times you were exercising and stuff. So it kind of included not so favorable foods. It was in there. It was kind of like you can have them, but then they're not ideal. But then
Mm,
paleo sort of came into the picture. So
mm,
that was all, eat real foods and stuff. And so we've kind of gone down that route as part of, and it is
mm.
part of our culture, right? It's part of what CrossFitters do.
Yeah.
They follow a paleo diet. And it's definitely led
Mm,
us down a pathway in all other parts of our life.
right.
With something like the paleo diet, would you say that that is a something that's gaining in popularity or has gained in popularity, or is it a trend?
Oh yeah. It's definitely a trend. Yeah. I mean, so are you not talking about a fad or a
No.
trend? Because the fad, yeah, it's a
Oh,
trend.
fad's kind
I
of a
mean,
bit more short term, is it?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fad's really like, I don't know, whoopie pies or something like that. It comes and goes. It's a moment. Yeah. The paleo, I mean, the thing is with veganism, it's more about the plant-based movement, I would say. So this whole plant-based movement,
Mm,
because the vegan meats have declined. They've declined during COVID, the vegan meats, because
okay.
most of them, when people have had time to read the back of the packet, they've gone, wow, that's quite a lot of ingredients on there that I can't pronounce. And I have tummy ache a lot. I wonder why, because it's hydrolyzed pea protein
Oh,
and,
all sorts of stuff to make it taste
it's all sorts of rubbish.
okay.
Yeah, to make it taste like bacon, right?
Yeah.
So that's been part of the issue, is that they've now, so it's declined because a lot of brands jumped on the bandwagon when they started to see that rise of popularity of plant-based meats, started putting out any old rubbish. It got to a critical mass. Then during COVID, people started reading the and then a lot of them have disappeared off the market.
Right.
So there's not that many left. There's comparatively. And then you've got, of course, the paleo strand. And one of the things with trends always is that it's a little bit like massive rise in AI.
Mm,
Of course, there's going to be and there's already you always have to have the balance, the flip side of the coin. So what we also see is this huge rise of people living off grid, much more gardening, living home, community-based networks, um, like a whole community systems, living, communicating, people coming off social media, people promoting not using cards to pay and using money, that whole thing. So it's
mm.
gone, it's like the polarity. And paleo and plant-based, not exactly opposite sides of the coin, actually.
No.
But it's about, the paleo and the plant-based, it depends on what sort of plant-based. Because you could say I'm vegan and you could eat chip sandwiches,
Yeah.
you could eat, I mean, really, that's there's there's a million things that you could eat that don't involve meat or dairy, and you could say, well, I'm a vegan. Doesn't
Mm.
mean to say that I am a healthy, balanced food eating person. So I think that paleo is really more in that clean eating space,
Yeah, right.
and
Yeah. And that's a
I would
trend.
say, and that's absolutely a trend, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. That people have I mean, God, it's so difficult, because there's, on one side, we know that the cheapest way to eat is to cook from scratch. And the healthiest way to eat is to cook from scratch. You know exactly what's in it. You're buying the ingredients as close to source as possible. So get some veg, get some potatoes or whatever. You can make a big meal if you are impoverished. You
Mm.
don't have a lot of money, but you've got a family, some rice, whatever, and you could make a big meal for people. But on the flip side of that, there is such food poverty and restriction that some people might not even have gas or electric to be able to cook with. And so in the UK, this is quite a thing at the moment. So So then, and then they get things that are coming from the food banks, and the food banks are not giving them fresh food. They're giving them tinned food and processed food.
Mm,
So in some ways, is clean eating a privilege
mm,
because you've got time and you've got the education and the capability. And so then you think, well, if it's not clean eating, then it's packaged food. And that's because I've got my food from a food bank. I don't know. I mean, this is the thing. It's not, there's just not one simple answer.
yeah.
But I think that paleo suits a lot of people. Not everyone, but it suits a lot of people.
And I guess you talk about trends, and quite often some of the, well, I heard you on an interview talking about air protein as an example, and I've
Yeah.
seen you talk about these kind of quirky things where you can package breathing air or something. Was that one a while ago or something? Was there something?
No, I haven't. No, what's that?
I can't
Oh,
remember. I can't
okay.
remember. There
But
was
yes,
something, and it
definitely
was
air
like some
protein.
random kind of thing that it would become like fresh air kind of thing. Fresh air in a packet? No.
No, no. I don't think so. I
Anyway,
don't think I've ever said that. But anyway, yeah.
air protein was one, and they kind of that. Although, like a lot of the things that you predict sound a little bit out there, they do come true.
Mm.
But when you kind of think that some things are trends, like healthy eating, that's kind of like a trend. Some trends aren't bad, right?
Oh no. Oh God, no, not at all. I don't think trends are bad at all.
Mm.
I never think
And
of
we
a
can
trend as a
be
bad thing.
we can kind of look at the food industry and go, they're trying to make us buy, they're directing our attention to certain types of food, or like you said, the coffee thing with the bright lights, and it's like you can feel a little bit tricked, like it's a big have. we're not
Yes,
we're
yeah.
not actually making any of our own choices, but there are some ways that it has a positive impact as well. Not everyone's out to
Oh,
get us.
well, this is the one thing that I think they're only making stuff that they think you want. And if you
Yeah,
don't buy it, they don't make it.
yeah,
And
right.
such a high percentage, I mean, such a high percentage of foods that are, it takes about 3 years for a brand to come up with an idea. No, bigger brands come up with an idea, do all of the due diligence because it's a big deal. You can't be killing
Mm,
people with what you make. And the bigger you are, the more checks and balances you have. And then you've got to do all the marketing and get that on the shelves. It takes about 3 years. And most of them only last 6 months
wow.
on the shelves because people are the litmus test. If people don't like it, then then they're not going to make it anymore. So you have a lot of power as a consumer. And they're only making these snacks with whatever, the coconut. They're only doing that because they've found a gap in the market where consumers are saying, we want that thing.
Mm,
That's what, they wouldn't have been making a plant-based coconut custard thing 10 years ago for consumers
mm,
because the market wasn't there. So I think that we are so powerful beyond our wildest dreams as a consumer with what we buy, what we choose. That is exactly how we vote.
mm,
And the politics of food is it's the biggest way we vote. You think it's the election, but actually it's how you shop. It's massive. It's
wow.
massive because it affects communities, it affects shipping, it affects cultures in the world. You're buying quinoa, you're probably
Mm,
buying it from, depends on where the quinoas come from. There is British quinoa, but there's also things from Peru. And then you think about the community in Peru, how you shop matters.
mm,
It really
yeah,
matters.
wow.
And it's a huge responsibility for people. And I think that that's what food is. Again, going back to it, it's mother. It is the complete nurture of self, family, community, planet. It's
Mm.
huge. But hey, no pressure.
No, no pressure for you.
Pressure people. But
Uh,
if you want to take it on, you can. I mean, right now, since Brexit in the UK, one of the things, there's a lot going on in the world, and it's hard to keep up. And no matter what you're you desperately want
preferences
to
are.
keep up,
Yeah.
it's still difficult, right? Because there's a lot of information and what's true and what's not true. And for us, Brexit happened. People don't know this. I mean, really genuinely don't know that the labeling laws, were governed by the European Union. So for the whole of Europe, they're governed. When we come out, then it shifts for the UK. What also happens is that we start to buy fruit and veg from countries that are not regulated within the EU. And that means that they can use sprays on crops when it's non-organic that are considered to be carcinogenic, that the EU would not allow. But now Britain are buying those in. Nobody knows this. Then you buy some oranges, and it's pretty hard to get organic oranges in the UK. So you buy regular oranges, and you think, well, they're oranges, and you're peeling them, and you've always shopped for for some people, all of their lives, trusting that even if it's not organic, it's not deadly. But when you read the little tag on the bag of oranges, it's got things in that said this is carcinogenic in the tiny small print.
Holy crap.
Because we can now have things from countries that are not allowed within most regulations within the world. We're buying things from countries that are unregulated, and nobody knows. And it's a massive responsibility on the consumer. And they can say, well, we put it on the packet. Yeah, but come on. Who would have thought to have read the tiny little label on the bag of orange? They just think they're just oranges. There's no ingredients in these. What would I need to read the ingredient label? That's tricky.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, sorry, I suppose is this the light and fun podcast? Whoops.
Oh no, it's life, health, and the universe. We want to know all of the things that are going on and be like conscious humans, right? That's one of the things I love about hearing these things is we can make, the more we know, the better the choices we can make, whether it's with our food, whether it's with our lifestyle, what we listen to on the on the socials, or whether we watch the news or not. All of those things, they're important, and we can make much more conscious choices. We have hit the hour, and I have got something else, just a little thing. Well, it's not really little, but like just gonna hit you with it anyway. I follow a few different people in esoteric areas, and there's been a lot of talk in the last little while about this dawning of the age of Aquarius, like where we literally did go into Aquarius. I think it was Pluto went into Aquarius for the first time in like 274 years or something. And so there's this shift for humanity, and it kind of, it's all started. And although you're a food futurologist, I'm not going to ask you your predictions, but
you should.
Okay, what are your predictions?
I'll talk about this. So this is right up my street. So
cool.
So completely. So when I'm looking at these trends or whatever, I mean, I look at these curves of humanity, and 91-year cycle is a big one.
Okay.
There's a lot of different cycles, and this 270-year thing is that we're changing a complete way of humanity being and the motivating factors into another way. So if we take it out of the esoteric, and we, because a lot of people think, oh, well, that's woo-woo, or doesn't really apply, or it's astrological or whatever. There is still another place for that. And I talk to, when I talk to businesses about this, is exactly the same thing. It's that the reason I knew 2020 was that for me, that was an 8-year prediction. So I started in 2012 saying, this is coming, because that was almost the pivot. And then you've got 6 years until 2026. I mean, this year it's volatile. There's a lot of volatility and war. And next year also, things that are going to, it's almost like if Trump gets in, don't think it's going to be for 4 years, because things are going to shift. It's shifting. It's just not what it seems. Nothing is what it seems. There's going to be a lot of reveals yet to come, things about COVID coming out the woodwork, things about lockdown coming out the woodwork, information that's still becoming available to us. There's a lot of revelation in these 6 years, and also breaking down of systems, which is part of this. As we move into a new age, if you want to call it that, the age of Aquarius, you don't just have a seamless transition from one state of being and one way of operating in the world and all of the systems and all of the things which has been about having, really. It's been a system of having money, having a job, having a better job, moving into knowing, where kindness is going to be a massive part of the value system. We haven't had that luxury, that knowing and the kindness and understanding what it means to be human. We haven't had the luxury of even thinking about that in the last 270 years. We've been busy with all of the other stuff, like how do you get light and how do you heat your house and things like that. So this is the next phase. And these 6 years are a complete and utter overhaul of humanity in a way. And that happens on a personal level. So that's why there's a lot of breakup of relationships. There's a lot of things, dissolutions of governments. It's why we'll see the fall of Europe, I believe. It's why we'll see all of the ways that things have come together and sort of held together relationships in the widest context, way in which we can trust banking systems or housing systems or growing systems, food systems, governmental systems, and how the way it's all held together starts to kind of, it's like there's like a tremor and an earthquake, and it's breaking up and it's messy. And people get scared, and there's an insecurity and there's a fear. And what people are attaching to, a lot of businesses are attaching to data to feel safe. Give me statistics and data and things where I can go, okay, I'll be okay, I'll feel okay. And the algorithm will, because we're all algorithmed up. So we're trusting, again, outsourcing our faith, our feelings of goodness into something other, which we've done for so long. And until we bring it back to self, we'll start to stabilize. And that's what the next phase is. So it's all going to come good, but it's really going to be good. And I think the future is really positive, but it's a very tricky, messy time. God, the dogs in the plant. Oi, Truman, oi.
What's he doing?
God, he's dug up I don't know. I think he's found a crystal in the plant. I don't know what he's doing. Anyway, sorry about that.
That's all right, naughty Truman. I was hoping my dog didn't start scratching on the door.
I put crystals in all my plants.
Well,
crystals help your plants grow.
Cool. I love that. And I just find it amazing that there are like I've heard from so many different kind of directions this same sort of feeling, and it is
really
there's this feeling of there's stuff changing. And I guess one of the things that I want to do as well to share on the podcast is to help people understand that so they're ready. Because it could be pretty scary if you just kind of like not up to date with that stuff, right? It's like all of the things that people have put their trust in for a long time. Yes. Can't necessarily be trusted anymore.
A lot of people are feeling, I think, insecure, scared, wobbled. There's no plan. There's no, there's the old paradigm isn't working. However, I do think, and I just wanted to say this, that some people like me are talking about these future things. And some people, and you're a great example of this, are living them. You are living in the future. You're not talking about it because you made a choice quite a long time before this was whether you're aware of it or not, you're feeling something that's the pulse, and you're going with something that feels right for you and living into a future existence which will be more desirable as time goes on, and that more and more people will want. And you chose it at a time when more and more most people were not going that direction. So you're living into the future, which
we literally chose it like 6 months before we we got out went to the UK, did our 3-month visit, moved
Yeah.
out of the city, and then like shit hit the
Exactly.
fan. Oh,
Yeah,
that's great. Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah. No. Oh, it's amazing. You know, you're living the future. You are you're living in this sort of if you were the blueprint of the future of humanity. There you go, viewers. Nadine
Keep
is the
listening.
blueprint. So yeah, exactly. So what you're doing is the future of humanity, really, for a very large majority of people who are going to thrive. Survive is what we're all busy doing,
Yeah.
but you're thriving, and that's the difference.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a
good for
beautiful
you.
note to end on. I've absolutely loved catching up with you. Thank you so much for sharing all of the things with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and hopefully it won't be too long before we talk again. Lots of
Yeah,
love.
that would be great. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.